Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Living Manna Church. Hi, I'm Pastor Dave Satan, Senior Shepherd here at Living Manna. It's Wednesday night, which you know what that means, Wednesday night Bible study. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. It's a beautiful evening here in the Northeast. Wonderful, wonderful temperature. Hopefully you guys are having just as beautiful an evening wherever it is that you are watching from. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. Got a neat study, at least I hope what you think would be a neat study. Actually, a very important study, but we'll get into that in just a second. In the meantime, just good morning, or good morning. Good morning. You can tell how tired I am. Good evening to everybody hanging out with us. Make sure you chime in tonight. Give us a little shout out from wherever it is that you're watching from. And don't forget, guys, if this is the first time that you're hanging out with us, or if you've been hanging out with us for a while but you haven't subscribed, you can do that. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button. This way you're notified every time that we go live. And of course, give us a thumbs up. If you enjoy the message, share it out with somebody, give us a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm, helps it send it out to other people that might be like-minded and looking for a similar type of study. So with all of that, I think that's the basic commercials out of the way. Schedules are all the same. We've got nothing really out of the ordinary going on just yet. Got some stuff coming up, but I'll share that with you at another date. Of course, we do have our Hidden Manna coming up this upcoming Friday night at 7:30 with Brother Max. Looking forward to that. As always, neat conversation. But I got an interesting Bible study. Actually, we didn't do it last week. We've been in the middle of all sorts of construction and trying to get through that stuff. It's still kind of crazy over here, but we wanted to make sure we got Bible study out to you guys tonight because we're trying to build towards something. Obviously, eventually to get to the book of Revelation, but even more importantly than the book of Revelation, eventually we want to get to my best explanation of the calendar. I've been doing a lot of study, a lot of research for quite a few weeks, maybe a couple of months now, on trying to get this down pat. I know we've sort of been a little bit all over the place, but we're gonna buckle it down, and we're gonna get to some real good, at least what I hope is some real good information for you guys. But before we do that, studies like today are sort of foundational towards that end, because to me it's not just enough to give you what it is I understand as the calendar and what we should be doing as a calendar if we're going to observe Abba's calendar. But I think it's also important to understand why, what the story is, because it really is part of a bigger story. And we need to understand the story, because when you understand the story or the context of the story, when you begin to understand what the calendar is, you realize how important it is and where it fits in this bigger story. So that's sort of where we're heading to, and that's not just here on Wednesday nights. That's part of what we're doing on our Shabbat, on our Saturday services. So make sure you listen to Wednesday. Make sure you listen to Saturday. They're all sort of building towards a similar theme, trying to help us understand some of the foundational concepts before I really get into the concept of the calendar and how it is, at least by my best understanding, what it is that Moses says, what it is that Enoch says, what it is that the writer of Jubilee says, all of it, the Zadok, all of it together. We're going to try to put it all together and try to understand what the sun, the moon, and the stars are really about. But before we do that, like I said, there's some foundational stuff. Tonight is really important for that. The topic and the title for tonight is, of course, let me pop this up here so you guys can see it. The father of lies, the father of lies. So this is really, I guess, sort of I guess really a part two or a follow-up on what we did a couple of weeks ago. That is that El is not a man, that he should lie, talking about Abba's truth. And we're going to get into Abba's truth today, but we're also going to get into some of the lies as well, because this is important. This is really important foundational stuff for us to understand, again, especially when it comes to understanding the calendar or having an understanding of the calendar. And I know there's all sorts of groups, all sorts of different ideas, and we're going to try to mull through it all and make some sense out of it. But I think this stuff is necessary first. Okay, so with all of that, commercials kind of out of the way, let's open up with a word of prayer and we'll jump right into tonight's study. Abba, we love you. We ask for eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts that are willing to obey. In the Master's name, amen. Amen. Okay, so here we go, guys. This is tonight's, let me make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. This is tonight's opening verse. Now, we're gonna sort of retravel over some area that we've talked about before. We're going to look at it, I think, with a little bit different perspective. Really, really pay attention, if you would, to the PDP version. And when I say PDP version, it's not another version of the Bible. It's sort of just me paraphrasing, me adding some commentary in there. And when you see the yellow in parentheses, that's my thoughts. That's my understanding, to try to help simplify or clarify the verses that we're talking about, so you get the idea of what it is that I feel Abba's opening up my eyes to, and I want to try to open up your eyes to as well. But this should be really familiar to all of us. This is Gospel of John, chapter 8 and verse 44. And it says the following: "You are of your father, the devil, and the desires of your father you wish to do. He was a murderer from the beginning. He has not stood in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks the lie, he speaks of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it." And of course, I highlighted there, if you can see in the blue, there is no truth in him. Again, for just topic and title for tonight, we are talking about the father of lies, or the topic about the father of lies. Again, we're getting into some truth, the idea of what truth is, and as well as the idea of what a lie is. But I want you guys to realize this. This is sort of big picture information. This thing that you and I are involved in, this walk that we are involved in, this trying to understand who Father is, trying to understand what the instructions are, trying to walk this out the best we can. This is all part of a conflict. All of it. This is all part of a war. When we say war, because when we talk about war in heaven, we're thinking that somehow Satan has powers that are sort of equal to God, and there's an equal battle going on here, and that's just not the truth. The battle that's going on is for us. There's a conflict that concerns us, not necessarily Father. Father's not in any jeopardy whatsoever, but there is a conflict down here that concerns us, and of course it concerns the heavens as well. And we'll get into a little bit of what that distinction is tonight. This conflict, or better yet, here up on the screen, you can see it says a war. Excuse me, I got allergies. Of course, this is allergy season. My allergies are killing me, so please pray for me that I don't sneeze all the way through this thing. But this is about a war. This is about a conflict, and I want to share some familiar verses with you. But I want us to try to see beyond just what it is that we've looked at before, but to see the story, the bigger story, that we can understand how eventually the calendar and everything else, the Sabbath, the commandments, all of it, really fit into this story, and how important this is, and really what's at risk here. What is this battle about? I think we said last week, this is a test, right? That this whole thing is a test. Abba is looking for people that will pass the test. He's looking for a bride. He's not just looking for any old bride. He's looking for a bride that is willing to put on the white robes, right? To be that bride that honors the husband, that honors the covenant. So here is Genesis, familiar ground, but pay really, really close attention to the yellow. And I've got some Strong's definitions in here that you guys can follow along with. Of course, if you've got your own Strong's or Young's Concordance, you guys can look this stuff up yourself. It's all there. And you should access this yourself. But here is Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. Very, very familiar verses. And I submit to you that this is the declaration of war, or the beginning of the conflict. Here's Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. Of course, this is after Adam and Eve, the whole issue with the eating of the tree, eating of the fruit of the tree, the temptation of the Nachash, that is the serpent. And it's really the temptation of the devil. We've learned, if you listen to some of the hidden matters we talked about, it's the serpent is what allows itself to be used by the devil, to speak the devil's words. It's the serpent. So the serpent's going to wind up getting judged here, but it's also really a judgment upon the one who is the head of the serpent, or the one who is the voice behind the serpent. And maybe that's a better way of saying it. the voice behind the serpent, because the voice is going to become really, really important here. So Genesis, Genesis chapter 3 and verse 15, it says, "And I will put enmity," again, PDP version, conflict, war, or enmity is really sort of the root word in the English where we get the word enemy from, which, goes along with the lines of war or some sort of conflict. "And I will put enmity between you." Now, the you he's speaking about here is the serpent. But it's the serpent, and we're going to find out in a second, it's the one behind the serpent, but he's going to be defined pretty specifically here. He's talking about the serpent, the one who, the animal that allowed itself to be used by the devil to do this thing. "I will put enmity," conflict, "between you," that is the serpent, the one who speaks on behalf of the devil. Or to put it another way, is the voice of the devil, or the voice of the deceiver. So between him and the woman, of course, the woman here is Eve. This story is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as the book goes on, and the woman's going to become something much, much bigger than that later on. But for right now, it's Eve. "And between your seed." Now, the seed he's talking about here is the seed of the serpent, or really the seed of the one whom the serpent is speaking for. And I put there in the PDP, "between your seed," between the children, because that's what seed is, children, offspring. "Between the children, other serpents." And it gets a whole bunch of different definitions as you go through the Bible. They're called serpents. They're called wolves. They're called scorpions. They're called vipers. And what makes all of these different titles, puts them together, is all of these things bite. Many of these things have venom or poison when they bite. And so when Abba is speaking here and he says enmity between your seed, that is the children of the serpent. The other children, other serpents, other wolves, other scorpions, other vipers, others who will speak just like the serpent spoke on behalf of the devil, or will bite just like the serpent bit on behalf of the devil. There's people coming that are going to do that. That's what this is telling us in a spiritual way, but also in a very literal way. So between your seed and her seed, and of course the her seed, I think is twofold here. Obviously it's Messiah, right? Because we're going to get the word he here. But we are also the seed. We're also part of the promised seed. So I think it's talking about the godly seed, the people that follow. But specifically, this winds up to be one of the first messianic, it's really not the first, but one of the most obvious ones in English anyway, of the coming Messiah. In Hebrew, a little bit different. So it says, the he, meaning the Messiah, and I'm right here, guys, so you guys can follow me. I'm going to highlight that in blue. He, the Messiah, there we go. He, the Messiah, shall crush. Now, I decided to give you a definition of this because I want you to see something here. In this conflict that's going on, the seed of the woman is going to crush. Now, the word crush is in your Hebrews Strong's Concordance, Hebrews 7:779. It is the word shuf. It's the sound of it. You would say shuf in English. Well, that's the sound that it makes. And what it means is to overwhelm, to break, to bruise. That's why in some of the versions, when you read it, it says, he will bruise your head and you shall bruise his heel, right? So that's accurate. But go through those definitions because it's actually a couple of different words and read it all. But in summary, it means to overwhelm, to break, to bruise. So it's telling us that the Messiah, the seed of the Messiah, will crush, will bruise, will overwhelm, will break your head. Now, two concepts with this. One is, and we see this throughout the scripture multiple times in Psalms, how Abba is going to make the Messiah's enemies a footstool, right? You've maybe seen movies where, a conquering king or a gladiator or whatever it is defeats his enemy, and when his enemy is down on the ground, he puts his foot on his neck or on his head to show dominance over that. And that may be what's kind of being implied here in a general sense, but there's something else being implied here too in a linguistical sense. Because when it says your head, the word head here is Hebrews, in your Strong's Concordance, 7218. And it's the word Rosh. And there's a whole bunch of different definitions, a whole bunch of different words, but it means basically this: the captain, the chief, the company, the ruler, and I put in there in the PDP, the devil. So he's talking to the serpent who has allowed the devil to speak through him. So this is a judgment upon the serpent and all the seed that will come from the serpent, but also an instruction or a prophecy that the seed of the woman is not only going to crush the serpent, it's going to crush his head. The head meaning the one in charge, the one behind, the one whose voice is actually being heard. So, one more time, he shall crush your head, and you, meaning the serpent, the one who speaks for the head. The serpent, through his voices, shall crush. Same word, again, to overwhelm, to break, to bruise, to crush. His heel. And I guess the indication is here that not only is the devil going to get injured, or the head of the serpent is going to get injured, not necessarily the head, but the captain of the serpent is going to get injured, but so is the heel of the one who is coming. And that word heel is very important. It is in your Hebrews Concordance, Hebrews 6:119. It's also 117, 6117, 6118, 120. And you really, when you look at up these definitions, you got to read all of it, right? Because some of them are root words, and many times they're very, very similar, but there might be some little distinction between them. You need to read them all to try to really figure out what's being said here. So the serpent, the head is going to be crushed. The seed, but its seed is going to crush, overwhelm, break, bruise his heel. But that word heel is acheb, A-Q-E-B. And here's what it means. It means seized by the heel. We sort of see this picture when Jacob and Esau are born, right? And Esau is coming out, and Jacob grabs his heel. He restrains, he holds on to his brother. That's the same concept that's going on here. So the heel here means to be seized by the heel, to be restrained. So if you're walking and you're walking downstairs and somebody grabs your heel, they're stopping you, they're restraining you. They may not stop you, but they're restraining you. They're holding you back from going all the way down the stairs. They're tripping you up. And so when it says that he shall crush, he shall overwhelm, that is the master, the serpent or his seed shall overwhelm or break or bruise the heel, that is to seize, to restrain. And in 6119, which is the actual word there, it also means the rear of an army. So you got the front of the army, right? You got the head of the army, but then you got all the soldiers behind. And the implication here is that the soldiers behind are being restrained. They're being held back. Again, you read this in English and you really don't get this, but you start to look at the definitions and you say, oh my goodness, wait, there's more being, and if you have a spiritual eye to see, there's more being said here than actually meets the eye. Okay, I know a little bit different. So this is the pronunciation or the beginning of a conflict. I want to show you the ending of a conflict, or really it's not the ending, because the ending is Revelation 19, but we're not going to get there for tonight. But here's the book of Revelation that shows us this same conflict much later on in the text. So the conflict doesn't start in Revelation chapter 12 that we're going to read in just a second. The conflict starts in the book of Genesis. The war starts in the book of Genesis. By the book of Revelation, chapter 12, it takes on a different phase, but it's still the same conflict. It's still the same war. There's a deception that's going to go on. So here's Revelation chapter 12 and verse 7. It says, and there came to be fighting. And again, PDP version, just to sort of match them together, a war. And as a matter of fact, it depends on what version you got. It might even just say, and there was war in heaven. There was conflict in the heavens. Michael and his messengers fought against the dragon. Wait a second. Who's the dragon, as we just read in Genesis 3:15? Not the serpent, but the head, the one behind. As it says here, let me just highlight this in purple, maybe a little bit easier to see. Who is the Rosh, the chief, the company, the ruler, that is the head? Well, it's the serpent, or here, the dragon, or really Lucifer, the devil, Satan, the deceiver, whatever term you want to give to him. So it says, Michael and his messengers fought against the dragon, the head, the Rosh. And the dragon and his messengers fought, but they were not strong enough, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. Now, a lot of people sometimes look at Revelation 12, and we think this is the same story that we're getting in in Genesis 3. Genesis 3 is the beginning of it. Revelation 12 is another phase of it. So whatever was going on, the serpent, who is the one the devil, who is the one who speaks through the serpent, still has access to the heavens for whatever reason. Again, this is above my pay grade, but he's got access to the heavens. Job tells us just that much. But now, come Revelation 12, whatever access he did have is now removed. The war has moved from just this earthly conflict to something much bigger. And the thing that changes all of that, of course, is the resurrection, which is what tells us is what the beginning of Revelation 12 is all about. It says, and the dragon and his messengers fought, but they were not strong enough, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. And the great dragon was thrown out. That, and here it is, PDP version, that voice, the one who was the words behind the serpent of Genesis 3 of old, called the devil and Satan. And what has he done? So by the time Revelation 12 comes around, from the time Genesis 3 begins, all the way up to the time Revelation 12, and obviously from our perspective, the last 2,000 years as well, what is it that this deceiver has done? This is really important, guys. He leads the whole world, or all the world, astray. He has deceived the whole world. This is by the time of the resurrection he's done this. And he's going to continue to do this and continue to go after the woman, because that's what Revelation 12 is about. He goes after the woman and after her children, which is exactly what Genesis 3 told us. Enmity between the woman and her seed and the serpent and his seed. Can you see how Revelation 12 is directly connected to Genesis chapter 3? And it's not the only verses that are connected. We're going to look at some more connections in just a second. So he leads the whole world astray. How is the question? Well, the same way that he did it in Genesis 3. Through poison, through venom, through biting or bites. How? By his word, by the seed that comes from him and the things that they say that are in opposition to what Father's instruction is. That's the poison. That's the poison of Genesis 3. Did God really say? God didn't mean it. Go ahead, eat of the tree. Do all the things Abba said not to do. The serpent added, and he took away from Abba's word. And, of course, the woman and the man follow it. So what winds up happening? He was thrown out. That is the devil. That is the voice behind the serpent. Even though he's called the serpent, it's really it's a term for the thing in Genesis 3, but also for the head, the one behind it. He was thrown to the earth, and his messengers were thrown out with him. So now something changes by Revelation 12, where whatever access the serpent, the devil, has to the heavens is done away with. He is solely limited in influence now to the earth. But he doesn't stop. It doesn't change his character. He keeps doing what he's doing. And he's already deceived the whole world. Is he going to stop? Well, the obvious answer is no, he's not going to stop. He's going to continue. All right. So this is a war or a conflict over truth, right? There's what Abba said to the woman, to the man in the garden. That is truth. There is what the serpent said to the woman and the man in the garden. That is a lie. I know it's a very simplified way of looking at it, but it is supposed to be simple. But then we're supposed to extrapolate that simplicity across time. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as we go through. So this is a war, if you would, over truth. Now, I think a couple of weeks ago, this is a slide from a couple of weeks ago, when we talked about Elohim is not a man that he should lie. This is a war over the truth. So when we say truth, we need to have an accurate definition of what truth is. Now, there's a lot of synonyms to truth. There's Torah, there's instruction, there's the word, there's his voice. These are all synonyms. They all mean the same thing. But this is a battle starting in Genesis, a conflict, an enmity between the voice of the serpent and the voice of Elohim being played out amongst men and amongst snakes, amongst men and his seed, and amongst snakes and his seed, which is also going to wind up to be men, over truth. So what is truth? Just real simple. Psalm chapter 19. We went over this quite a few times. This is the description of the Maseroth, and we'll get more to that when we get to the calendar. The Torah of Yah is, here's the PDP version. The Torah of Yah is what? Oh, now again, when we say Torah, we mean the instructions that Father has given us about life. He gave instructions to the man and the woman in the garden. Do this, don't do that. That's it, the instructions. He's given us instructions. Do this, don't do that. This brings life, this brings death. Same instructions that were given in the garden, obviously much more detailed now, time has gone on. But the Torah, the instruction of Yah, is truth. It's perfect. Bringing back the soul or restoring the soul. The witness of Yah is, again, PDP version, the witness of Yah is truth. It's trustworthy. Making the wise simple. The orders of Yah are truth, straight, rejoicing the heart. The commandments of Yah are, again, truth, clear, enlightening the eyes. The fear of Yah is truth, clean, standing forever. The right rulings of Yah are true. I didn't have to put the word truth there because it's already built in. They are righteous altogether. The truth is that they are more desirable than gold, than much fine gold, and sweeter than the honey and the honeycomb. So from our perspective, our desire, if we understand this, should be to want truth, to want to understand the witness, the Torah, the orders, the commandments, the enlightening, the right rulings. This should be something we want. This should be something we desire like gold. And, I'm like anybody else. I'm not going to pass up, a nice piece of gold. But that same desire should be in us as far as a desire to understand truth. However, with the truth, there is also a lie, and there is a conflict going on. And so you and I are at a point in history all the way, 6,000 years past Genesis 3:15, where this conflict has been going on so long, this battle for truth or this battle for a lie. You and I are coming out of darkness, out of lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. And what we're trying to get to is the truth. It's not always easy. And we're going to talk about this upcoming week. It's not always, in fact, it's not ever, ever, ever easy, but it is sweeter than the honeycomb. All right, so that's truth. Again, something we talked about a couple of weeks ago, so I'm not going to get too much into that. So let's look at some truth, or by the time Messiah comes, let's compare it with everything Abba has said. All right, so here's John chapter 1. Again, some very familiar scripture. We've gone over these before. These should not be unknown to you. John chapter 1, verse 14. Pay special attention to the yellow. And the Word. Now, by word, it means Father's truth or his voice. In the beginning was the Word. Or Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, Abba created the heavens and the earth. Abba said. He spoke. So Abba's word is Abba's truth, or Abba's word is his voice. And I think we talked about this, I think in a morning manna, and I'm pretty sure we talked about it 2 weeks ago, that Abba's voice or his word is him. It is the physical, auditory representation of who Father is. We don't see Father, but we hear him. We can understand him by what we hear. So when we say his voice or his word, that is who Father is. It says, and the Word became flesh. Now, I'm going to put something in here. I want you to think about this for a second. What John chapter 1, all of John chapter 1, and actually most of the whole book of John, is trying to tell us by this statement is he's actually quoting or trying to expound for us Deuteronomy 18. When he says, the truth, the voice, the word became flesh. For those that are reading in the first century, in their mind, they were Hellenistic Jews. Whether they were Hellenistic or not, they had the Torah. This would not have been foreign to them. They knew the promise of Deuteronomy 18, that someone was going to come in the flesh, that Abba's word was going to come in the flesh. So here it is, John 1:14 again, and the word became flesh and pitched his tent. The word tent there is tabernacle, right? So this is telling us that Abba sent his word, which is the very representation of who he is. He made it flesh, and he pitched a tent or a tabernacle. What's a tabernacle for? Well, if you go back to the Torah, the tabernacle is the way. It is the procedures that lead us to Father. If you don't go through the gate, if you don't go through to the brazen altar, if you don't go to the laver, if you don't go to the door, you don't come to Abba. That is the way, the truth, and the life. So it says Abba's voice in John 1:14, the very representation of who he is, became flesh and tabernacled amongst us to show us the way. And we saw his glory. We're talking about Messiah here. We saw his glory, his esteem, the esteem of an only brought forth of a Father, complete. Now, I want to underline this real quick so you guys can see this, because we obviously are talking about Messiah. He brought forth completeness or fullness. He fully revealed the mysteries in favor and truth. What mysteries in favor and truth? The mysteries of the Word. The mysteries of Father's truth. The mysteries of Father's voice. Again, by mysteries, we mean things that were there, but just not clearly seen yet, but always there, just not fulfilled, like the difference between a crescent moon and a full moon. All right, with that in mind, let's now look at Deuteronomy 18, and let's compare in our minds what John 1:14 is saying with what Deuteronomy 18:18 is saying. Look at what it says. This is Moses speaking about the prophet like him that's coming, the Messiah. I shall raise up for them a prophet like me. Well, what type of prophet was Moses? He was the prophet who spoke the Torah, who spoke Abba's word, who spoke in his voice, his own voice, they heard his voice, but whose voice was he representing? He was representing Father's voice. He spoke in Father's voice. And what did Moses do? He also pitched a tent. He built a tabernacle. Why? To show us the way through the gate, to the altar, to the brazen laver, into the holy place, into the Holy of Holies, all of things from Passover all the way to tabernacles. Moses also spoke Abba's word, was Abba's voice, and Moses also pitched a tent amongst his brethren. But here, Abba's telling Moses, I'm going to raise up a prophet like you to do all the things you've done out of the midst of their brethren, meaning their flesh. Their flesh, meaning the Jewish flesh, or really the Hebrew flesh, the tribe of Judah, but Hebrew flesh, humanity, human. Out of the midst of their flesh, their brothers, and I shall put my words. I will put my voice. I will put my truth. I will put my instruction in his mouth. Well, isn't that what we just finished reading all the way up here? It says, and the word, Father's voice, became flesh. Here it is. I will put my words, Father's voice, in his mouth. He will come from the midst of their brothers, flesh. Guys, John 1:14 is almost verbatim. And not just John 1:14, the whole first chapter of John, the whole book of John is trying to emphasize to us that Messiah is the prophet like Moses. And I shall put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command them, just like Moses did. So he's coming, he's pitching a tent, he has Abba's word in him, he's speaking Abba's voice. He's going to do everything Moses did, except what this tells us is what he's going to do is he's going to do it in completeness, in fullness. It's not going to be partial, it's going to be full. Here's John chapter 1 and verse 16. I'm right here, guys, if you guys can follow. John chapter 1 and verse 16. It says, and out of his completeness, meaning out of the Messiah's full understanding of the Torah, of the instruction, of the mysteries, of those things that were not fully known, we all did receive, and favor or grace upon grace. Now look what it says here. This is real important with the PDP. For the Torah, the instruction, which is Abba's word, Abba's voice, but it's in part because it contains mysteries. It's not the whole revelation. It's not the fullness. So, for the Torah, not in fullness, but it's still Abba's voice, was given through Moses. Well, that's what we just finished reading in Deuteronomy 18. I'm going to send another prophet like you. But it goes on to say, not only was the Torah, the word, the voice, in part, still containing mysteries, given through Moses, but the fullness of the Torah, the fullness of the mysteries, the fullness of Abba's voice, his favor and his truth came through Yeshua Messiah as the prophet like Moses. Guys, this is the whole underpinning of the Gospel of John. Messiah is the prophet like Moses. And you can see, hopefully you can see as you're watching, as you're listening to me, how these things are parallel. Again, how do we test this? If you cannot find this in the Torah, way before Messiah starts talking about it, or John or any of the other ones, then forget about it. If you can't find it in part, in shadow, before Messiah comes, then forget about it. And not just once, but twice, 3, 4, 5 times, over and over again, because Abba reiterates what he means. So is there, when Moses comes, a partial giving of instruction, enough instruction for them to have the instruction and to gain life, but not in its fullness yet, until the prophet like Moses comes to do everything Moses did, but on a fullness level, not just in partiality? Well, yes, we get that right from the Torah. Again, if you can't find it in the Torah as a doctrine, as a belief, as an understanding, forget it. Get rid of it. Don't pay attention to it. Let it go. That's the Gentiles adding stuff to it. It's got to be in the Torah. And I don't just mean in an arbitrary, you got to twist verses to make it. It's got to be right out there for you. Here it is right out there for us. Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 29. It says, the secret matters, and here's the PDP version, the secret matters, the fullness, the word, the truth, the voice of Elohim in its fullness is secret matters. They belong to Yah, our Elohim. They belong to Father. But what is revealed? Well, what was revealed? The word, the voice, the truth, in part, in shadow. The word, the voice, the Torah belongs, this is Moses writing, belongs to us and to our children forever to do all the words of this Torah. So did Moses realize that he didn't have everything? Yes, he absolutely did. He wrote it right there. He told us there's information that only Abba knows. The fullness of it, only Abba knows. That's why Abba is telling them in Deuteronomy 18, I'm going to send another prophet. And he's going to fulfill, he's going to give it all, which is exactly what John is telling us. Abba is going to put his word, his voice in this one who comes from their brothers. Okay, so with that, let's take a look at the next. Here is Exodus chapter 20:19. This is really the origin of all this. Again, you got to find this in the Torah if it's a true doctrine, a true understanding, something we really need to understand, hold on to, realize it's got to be in the Torah first, at least in shadow, but multiple times. So here it is, Exodus chapter 20, verse 19. This is when Abba is speaking on the mountain, right? You know, everybody's in front of the mountain. They're at Mount Sinai. They've gotten out of Egypt. It's 3 days. They wash themselves. They mikvah themselves. They wash their clothes. On the third day, it's going to become really important later on in another study down the road. Maybe you can take this and put it in the back of your spiritual thinking. Father came down, or his voice came on the third day, at the beginning of the third day. Abba's voice comes down. The mountain shakes. Thunder and lightning. The earth is shaking. The fire is all over the mountain. The mountain is burning. Shofars are blowing. Of course, it's, they explain it as a shofar, but it's probably a sound so many million times, louder and deeper than what a human blowing a shofar would be. But Abba's voice comes as a shofar to them. Freaks everybody out, right? It would freak all of us out if we were to see something like this. So what do they say? Here's Abba speaking for himself. And what did the people say? Exodus chapter 20, verse 19. And they said to Moses, after all of this, you speak. You bring the word. You be the voice with us, and we will hear. But let not Elohim, let not Father speak with us, lest we die. Very important verse, because they are asking Moses, they're asking Father, really, please don't speak to us anymore. We can't take it. Our hearts, we just can't. When you read the accounts, some of the accounts, they said that the animals were just, given birth. Rocks were exploding under the voice. Trees were exploding under the voice. So could you imagine everybody else there, freaking out as this voice is coming to them? They're like, no. We can't deal with this anymore. Please, we do not want to hear the voice of Father. What we want to hear is your voice, Moses. And when Moses speaks, what he actually is doing is, in a human sense, speaking the words. He is representing the voice of Father to them. Here's Deuteronomy 18, where we're just reading a couple of verses before it. Deuteronomy 18, verse 15. So you can see the correlation here. So this is the beginning of the Exodus journey. Deuteronomy 18 is the ending of the Exodus journey. It says, Yah, your Elohim, shall raise up for you a prophet, the Messiah, like me. Well, what did Moses do? He was the voice who spoke for Elohim. From your midst, from your brothers. We already read that. We read in verse 18, but here it is in verse 15 as well. And Moses says, listen to him. Listen to him, why? According to all that you asked of Yah, your Elohim, in the day of the assembly. He's saying, listen, why? Well, why did Abba allow Moses to be his voice? Because Israel asked. They couldn't take Father's voice. It was too much. We need a human representative that speaks your voice. That's Moses. So what is he saying here? Abba's going to send a prophet just like me, according to what you asked Elohim in Horeb in the day of the assembly, when you said, let me not hear again the voice of my Elohim, nor let me see the great fire anymore, lest I die. And Yah said to me, that is to Moses, what they have spoken is good. So Abba is telling them, answering their prayer. Their prayer is, we don't want to hear Father's voice anymore. Let us hear the voice of a man, of a prophet, who speaks with the voice of Elohim and the authority of Elohim. Moses spoke that way and pitched a tent. Messiah spoke that way in fullness and pitched a tent. This is so important that we get this. They both spoke or both represented the voice of Elohim to the people. Specifically, Moses tells us Messiah is coming because of what you prayed, because of what you asked. Now, obviously, did Abba know he was going to do that? Yes, of course. He knew from Genesis chapter 3 he was going to do that. But here's the reason why here. So here is our next slide. Again, chapter 18, to send a prophet like Messiah, the prophet Messiah, who is like Moses, who is the voice, who speaks for Elohim. So does that hold true? Does this follow through? Is this truth, this truth of Abba's word, does this hold true with Messiah? Absolutely. Just like with Moses. John chapter 8, verse 23. Again, pay real close attention to all of the yellow. And he said to them, you are from below. Below where? Because don't forget, we're talking about the analogy is Moses and the people. Well, where was Moses? He was up on the mountain. He was where Abba was. He saw the throne room. He was up on the heavenlies. The people were down below. So Messiah is making the same analogy to them. You are from below, from the earth, from down at the bottom of the mountain. I am from above, Mount Zion, in heavenly matters, where Abba speaks. You are of this world, meaning this religious world. I am not of this religious world. Therefore I said to you that you shall die in your sins. Here it is, guys. Look at this. For if you do not believe that I am he who? I am the prophet like Moses. For if you do not believe that I am he, you shall die in your sins. Hold on a second. Wait a minute. What are we supposed to believe about Messiah, or we will die in our sins? We are supposed to believe about Messiah that he is the prophet like Moses, the one who comes and speaks with the voice of Elohim, not like Moses did, in fullness. If we do that, then we'll be saved. Now, I know that's a whole lot different than we've heard before, but that's what Messiah just said. And I want to do what Messiah says rather than what men say. So one more time. For if you do not believe that I am he, I am the prophet like Moses, the voice of El from the mountain, you shall die in your sins. They said to him, who are you? They're not getting it, guys. They're not, even though the master, and you're going to find it as we go through this, he's literally quoting Deuteronomy 18 over and over and giving them hint after hint after hint that somebody should stop and say, one of the Pharisees, one of the Sadducees, one of the scribes should stop and say, hey, wait a minute, I know where that verse comes from. He's claiming to be Deuteronomy 18, but they didn't get it. And most people don't get it. We still don't get it today. So he says, who are you? And the master said to them, altogether that which I even say to you. That's kind of King Jamesy, kind of obtuse. What is he actually saying? Everything I've said out of Deuteronomy 18. Everything I just said to you, you should recognize. Everything I just said to you, you should understand. Everything that John writes in the beginning, you should understand. You should understand that what he's saying is that I am the fulfillment of what Moses said in Deuteronomy 18. I have much to say to you. I'm right here in verse 26. I have much to say to you and judge concerning you. But he, that is Father, that is Abba, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, who sent me is true or truth. And what I heard, what did he hear? Just like Moses, Abba's voice. And what I heard from him, these words in fullness, the instruction in fullness, I speak like Moses to the world. They did not know that he spoke to them of the Father. They still didn't get it. He is literally quoting Deuteronomy 18 here, if you've got eyes to see it. Verse 28, so Yeshua said to them, when you lift up the son of Adam. Now, this is a reference to John 3:14 and also Numbers 23. We're not going to get into it today, maybe a little bit next week. But he's referencing the story of when the master is telling Nicodemus, just as the serpent was lifted up in the wilderness. Why was he lifted up? All the people were being bit by snakes, and they were dying because they were bit by snakes because of their rebellion. He's telling them just like that, the people of his day have been bitten by serpents, by snakes, by religion, by things that are killing them. And just like Moses lifted up the serpent on the pole, so must the Son of Man. Or he says here, when you lift up the Son of Adam, then you shall know that I am he. I am he who? That I am he, the prophet like Moses. Because Moses lifted up the serpent on a staff for people to be healed. Messiah will be the offering lifted up on a cross, on a piece of wood to heal us. He's doing exactly what Moses did. And that I do none at all of myself. Messiah didn't come up with this stuff. Father did. But as my Father taught me, these from El's voice, these words I speak, just as you asked of El in Deuteronomy 18. We don't want to hear Father speak. Let us hear a prophet speak with the voice of Elohim on a human level. And what are they getting? They got Moses, and now they've got Messiah, which is what Moses tells us. This is the answer to your prayer, exactly what's going on. He says, and he who sent me is with me. Abba was with him, because if Abba's voice is in him, that is the representation of Father. Father's voice is his word. That is Elohim. It is his voice. And he who sent me is with me. The Father has not left me alone, for I always do what pleases him. And as he was speaking these words, many believed in him. So the master said to the Yehudim, to the Jews who believed him, if you stay in my word, which actually means if you stay in the Father's words, which Moses spoke and now I'm speaking in fullness, then you are truly my disciples. So when are we his disciples? When we stay in the words that Moses spoke and that Yeshua spoke in fullness, then we are Messiah's disciples. How are we saved? When we understand who he is. Who is he? The prophet like Moses. And if you don't, you will die. Boy, those are some really, really important principles that are not part of the whole modern religious teaching today. These aren't the things that we were told. That's not the prayer we were told to pray. That's not the things we were told to do to be saved. And yet these are the things Messiah is saying we need to do to be saved. As he was speaking these words, many believed. So the Jews, the Yehudim who believed in him, if you stay in my word, you are truly my taught ones, and you shall know the truth. You shall know the fullness of the Torah with all of its mysteries. And the truth, the fullness of the Torah with all of its mysteries, shall make you free. All of a sudden, you start reading it like that, and you're like, wait a minute. This is a totally different story. This is not what we were told. And beloved, it isn't. Because sort of the story that we got, well, it was full of venom. It was full of venom. Here is slide number 9. Let's take, I'm sorry, I went a little bit too far. Slide number 9. So here's the truth of El, the voice of God, versus the lie or the voice of the serpent. Because the voice of God was given to Adam, the son of God. Adam's the son of God. The voice of God was given to Adam. Do this, tend the garden, don't do this. It was given to him and to the woman. The voice of the devil was given to the serpent. And the serpent bit them, not literally, spiritually speaking, but bit them, poisoned them, and killed them, murdered them. So truth, Abba's truth, his voice, his word, his Torah, is the voice of Moses, and it is the voice of Messiah in fullness. The voice of Moses and the voice of Messiah. The Torah came through Moses, and the fullness of the Torah came through Messiah. The lie, however, and here's where we get into the whole idea of the lie, is the rejection, the adding to, or the taking away from Yah's voice. Whether it is the voice given through Moses or the fullness of the voice given through Messiah. You take away from that, and that is the lie. That's what happened in the garden. Here's John chapter 5, verse 45. Let's look at some instances of this. Listen to what the master says. Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. Meaning he's talking to the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the priests of his day, the people that just do not believe. They don't know Moses. They don't understand that he's the prophet like Moses. They're just not getting it. Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you. Who? Moses. Moses will accuse you. On that day, Moses will accuse you, in whom you've set your expectation, in whom you seem to hope in. For if you believed Moses, you would have believed me. So can you believe in Messiah and understand him without believing Moses? No, you can't. It's impossible. It's impossible. You get a piece of the message, a part of the message, and then what happens is we don't get the whole message and we start adding to it and taking away from it. Since he wrote about me. But if you do not believe his writings, that is Moses, the Torah, how shall you believe my word? If you don't believe Moses' voice, who spoke on behalf of Elohim to the people, how will you understand my voice as I speak for Elohim on behalf of the people? Just like Moses. You can't. It's impossible. It is absolutely I know this is a different gospel we're hearing, but it is impossible. Here's John chapter 8, verse 42. Yeshua said to them, if Elohim were your father, you would love me. For I came forth from Elohim and am here. For I have not come of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not know what I say? He's like, you guys should be getting this. Moses said all of this already. For I have not come of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not know what I say? Because you are unable to hear my word. If they're unable to hear Messiah's word, they're unable to hear Moses' word. If they're unable to hear Moses' word, they are unable to hear Father's voice. That's the problem. You are of your father, the devil. And let me put the PDP version is here, because here's what he's really calling them. The seed of the serpent. Genesis 3. The seed. The seed's coming. Genesis 3, you are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you wish to do. He was a murderer from the beginning. He knew that if he got the Adam and Eve to disobey Abba, that they would die. He was a murderer he knew that would happen. He murdered them from the beginning. He has not stood in the truth. The serpent, the devil, we keep saying serpent. I mean, that's the animal he spoke to, but the one behind him, the one called the great serpent, the devil, Satan, the deceiver, he has not stood in the truth. He does not stand in Abba's voice because there is no truth. He does not speak for Abba like Moses did, like Messiah does in him. When he does speak, however, since he does not speak for Abba, when he does speak to his seed, he speaks, here it is, guys. I highlighted it. I'm highlighting it here in purple. When the enemy speaks, what does he speak? The lie. What does he not speak or does not have in him? There is no truth. There is no Yah's voice in him like Moses and Messiah. It's just not there. So when he does speak, he speaks a lie. He adds to and he takes away from the Torah, from Abba's voice. And he speaks of his own. He's not speaking Father's words. They're religious words. They're good words. They're moral words. They're ethical words. They're spiritual words. But they're not Father's words. For he is a liar, and here's the title, and the father of it. And because I, that is the master, speak the truth with Abba's voice, you do not believe me, because they are used to hearing the voice of the serpent or the devil, the one behind it, which makes them serpents themselves. Why Messiah calls them serpents and vipers and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Oh my goodness. Oh my, this is a totally different gospel, totally different story than we have ever heard before. Here is the lie. This is really, really important. I'm gonna again pay real close attention to the yellow here. Now, I know we've gone over this before, but now knowing what we've just gone over, especially Genesis 3 and how that's the beginning of a conflict. Very often when we read 2 Thessalonians, very often in sort of the religious world today, we're all being told that some guy is going to come in the future, some antichrist, some beast is going to come in the future, and he's going to sit in the temple, and he's going to rule the world for 7 years and get the whole world to follow him. Do you know who told us that? Who are the people who told us that story? We're going to find out. It's the seed of the serpent. That's the story the seed of the serpent has told us. And by now, we should be asking ourselves, should I be listening to what the seed of the serpent says? Or should I be rethinking this whole thing based on what Moses said and based on what Mashiach has fulfilled? So with that in mind, let's run through 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and we're going to compare it to Genesis 3, which we compared other verses to already, Revelation 12. But like I said, you can compare it. This is said over and over and over and over again. Here's 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 6. This is concerning the coming of the Messiah. And it says in verse 6, and now you know what restrains for him to be revealed in his time. For the secret of lawlessness, the secret of lawlessness is already at work. Well, I got it in the PDP version here, so you don't have to guess. When did the secret of lawlessness start? Genesis chapter 3, when war was declared, when enmity was declared. That's when it started. This has been going on a long time. There's been vipers and snakes and scorpions and wolves for a long, long time. And there has also been Abba's voice for a long, long time. And the battle as to what do you listen to? Abba's voice or the serpent's voice? Are you the seed of the woman or are you the seed of the serpent? And sometimes it's hard to tell. We'll get to that when we get to our Saturdays when we're talking about the parables. So he says it's already at work. Only until he who now restrains. Hold on a second. We read that in Genesis 3 already. Here it is, all the way down here. And the serpent, the vipers, the scorpions shall crush his heel. And the concept of crushing his heel from H6 119, 17, 18, 20 means to be seized by the heel, restrained. The serpent and his lies restrain the people, hold them back. Like in the wilderness, bite them and they die. Like Messiah says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you go out to make a disciple and you make him twice as much the son of the lake of fire than yourselves. You go out and make disciples and you not only are you not entering the kingdom of heaven, but you are forbidding them to enter the kingdom of heaven. You are restraining them as seeds of the serpent, as children of the devil, as those who are spitting out venom and poison and doctrines that are not related to Moses and not related to Messiah. You are stopping, you are restraining the people from entering into the kingdom. Look what he says. And now we know what restrains. For him to be revealed in his time, for the secret of lawlessness, that is without the Torah, is already at work. Only until he who now restrains or crushes your heel comes out of the midst. Well, the midst is the midst of heaven. We read that in Revelation chapter 12. War in heaven. And the serpent and his angels are kicked out. They were the ones doing the restraining with their seed. Now they've been kicked out after the resurrection. So whatever's going to get revealed has to get revealed after the resurrection. After that, and then the lawless one. And we say lawless when everybody thinks about a guy. Well, I know it says one, or maybe it says he. But when you read in Revelation, it says one and he too. There's a false prophet, there's a beast. It's one, it's two. Actually, it's two different entities, but they're talked about as one. But they don't represent one thing. They represent millions and millions, if not billions of people, all called one. It says, and then the lawless one, that is the seed of the serpents, the viper, the religious snake spreading its poison, the Roman Babylonian beast, and false prophet of Revelation 13. Then it gets revealed after the resurrection, after the war in heaven, after the serpent gets kicked out, after the one who's been restraining Abba's people, then this other entity gets revealed, this false religion. And let me get rid of some of this. He shall be revealed. And when, just for a time's sake, when was this false religion revealed? When was this beast, that is the government of Rome and the religion of Rome revealed? Around AD 325 at the Nicene Council. That's when it was revealed. And then it took over the whole world, changed the gospel story, changed the message, made it something it was never supposed to be, removed the Torah, removed the calendar, removed the feast days, removed the Sabbath, removed the story of Messiah from the way it was told, implanted, added paganism, added pagan holidays, it did exactly what the serpent did in Genesis 1, what the Pharisees and Sadducees were doing. But he's telling us about this is another entity to come. It shall be revealed around 325 AD, whom the master, the seed of the woman, shall consume. Wait a minute, that's Genesis 3. It says, and the woman between that's the lawless seed of, that's the lawless, those who are the lawless ones without Torah, and her seed, who is the Messiah. He, the Messiah, shall crush your head. Here it says, and whom the master shall consume. Or shoof, overwhelm, break, bruise, crush. How? With the spirit of his mouth, or with his voice, or with the word, or with the sword of Elohim. This is Revelation 19. Revelation 18, the harlot of Babylon and her city is destroyed. That's something different. Revelation 19, the Messiah comes and he destroys the beast and the false prophet with the sword of his mouth. That's what this is telling us. That's what Saul is telling us here. With the spirit of his mouth, and bring to nothing with the manifestation of his second coming. Revelation chapter 19. That's what this is telling us. I'm right here in verse 9. It says, the coming of the lawless one, or for clarity, the coming of the false religion, who denies Moses, denies the Torah, denies the calendar, and the truth of who Messiah is. That is that he is the prophet like Moses and the fullness of the Torah. The coming of the lawless one, how does he do what he does? According to the working of Satan. Who's Satan? Well, Genesis 3 told us that Satan was, let me go down here, I'm right here. According to the working of Satan, or the head, the Rosh, the captain, the chief, the company, the ruler, the devil. Here it is. And Messiah shall crush your head, the Rosh, the devil. 2 Thessalonians is literally telling us what Genesis chapter 3 has already told us was coming. Here it goes. Where was I? With all religious power, signs. So it's according to the working of Satan. How? With all religious power. What Satan was going to do from 325 on was not going to be with some dark evil. It's going to be dark and evil. It's going to be horrific. It's going to be murder. It's going to be all the rest of that. But they're going to come as an angel of light. It's going to be as religion. It's going to be as something good. It's something love. You're supposed to love. You're supposed to be merciful. You're supposed to, love your brother. That's going to be all the stuff Satan will do and say and promote. But that's not what the people are going to do. And that's really not what he wants people to do either. You can do all the religious stuff in the world that you want to do. Just don't obey Abba's instruction. That's what it comes down to. It's not for you. It's a burden. Get rid of it. So he says, and it's in accordance with the working of Satan, who is the head, with all religious power, signs and wonders of falsehood, and with the deceit of unrighteousness in the people who are the many who are perishing. Because, why do the many perish? Because they did not receive the love of the truth. Just like the Pharisees and Sadducees of John chapter 8 and John chapter 5 that murdered the Messiah. This religion that has already been here for like 1,700 years will do the same thing, will not have the love of the truth, that which has been revealed by Moses and that which is revealed in its fullness by Messiah, spoken by Moses and Yeshua, in order for them to be saved. Just like Messiah said, how are you saved? You got to realize who I am. Who am I? I am the prophet like Moses. You don't realize that, you will not be saved. Because they did not receive the love of the truth in order for them to be saved. And for this reason, because of this, because they reject this, because this religion rejected this. And for this reason, Elohim sends them, that is the serpent seed, the many, those who have been deceived in the world. He sends them a working of religious venom, a working of religious delusion. Here it is. A working of delusion. Just like Revelation 12 says, the serpent comes and has deceived the whole world. Why? For them to believe a falsehood, a lie, and the father of lies. Guys, I hope that you can see, I hope I'm explaining this clear enough that you can see 2 Thessalonians is Genesis 3:15 expounded upon. We'll get back to this another time. Let's move on. I'm running out of time here. So what are the lies? What are here's some of the lies here's some of the deception we're going to go over, because we're talking about the Torah, we're talking about the instruction, we're talking about what Moses said, we're talking about what Messiah said, we're talking about Moses coming and pitching his tent and showing them the way, Messiah coming and pitching his tent and showing us the way. We're talking about Moses being the very personification of Elohim's word. We're talking about Messiah being the very personification of Elohim's word. We're talking about Moses lifting up the serpent in the wilderness. We're talking about Messiah being lifted up to heal us from the snake bites that we've all been bitten by. So here's some of, sorry, I went too far. Here's some of, I went too far again. Here's some of the things we're going to talk about and over the next couple of weeks. That's going to lead us to the calendar, because you can't understand the importance of the calendar. This is what I've come to realize. You can't understand the importance of the calendar without the story, because the story's important. In war, if this is war, one of the first things you do in war, even in modern warfare today, is you destroy the communications of the enemy. You sabotage them, you burn them, you destroy them, you get rid of their ability to send information to their soldiers. And that's what the devil has done. He's done everything he can to sever the communication. Thankfully, it's in the book. It's in the original book, the Torah, and it's also in the Gospels. And when you've got both of them, you can compare them to come to the conclusion of what the truth is. So the father of lies lies about the Torah, lies about the instruction, tells us it's not for us, lies about the Sabbaths, the memorial days of the seventh day and their importance to us, says they're not for us, there's a different day. Lies about the 6 days of working, and 2 times on the 6th day, you learn twice as much on the 6th day. He lies to us about the offerings and the importance of the blood offerings. He lies to us about the feast days, which are also Sabbaths, which are the way to Abba. And all of these guys, all of these things are wrapped up in the calendar. So what else did he lie to us about? If he's lied to us about all the rest of these things, do you think somehow we've gotten the calendar right? No, he's lied about that too. And not just to us, to everybody. To everybody he's lied. And we're going to I'm going to show you some scriptures where he explicitly tells us that this was coming. And this would be the thing that we would have to muddle through. He's lied to us about the calendar, about the appointed times, about the preset, determined times from the sun, the moon, and the stars. We've been lied to about the whole thing. So, just like Moses said, this is what has to happen. Here is last verse for today, Deuteronomy 30, verse 1. And it shall be when all these words come upon you, the blessings and the curses which I have set before you, and you shall bring them back to your heart among the nations where Yah, your Elohim, drives you, which is where we are today, driven amongst all the nations. The curses are upon us, and shall turn back to your Elohim and obey his voice. So what are we supposed to be doing now? Turning back to Elohim and obeying his voice. What's the voice of Elohim? Moses is the voice of Elohim. Yeshua is the fulfilled voice of Elohim. According to all that I command you today, with all your heart, with all your being, with all your children, then Yah your Elohim shall turn back your captivity and shall have compassion on you, and he shall turn back and gather you. You know what gathering is? Resurrection. That's what Moses is talking about, resurrection. From all the peoples where Yah your Elohim has scattered you. If any of you are driven out to the farthest parts under the heavens, from there your Elohim does gather you, and from there he does take you. And Yah your Elohim shall bring you to the land, the kingdom, which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. And he shall do good to you and increase you more than your fathers. And Yah your Elohim shall circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed, to love Yah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, so that you might live eternally. And Yah your Elohim shall put all these curses on your enemies, on the harlot of Babylon, on the beast, and on the false prophet, the religions. It's not just one, it's multiple, on the seed of the serpent. That's the enemy. That's the war that was declared. And on those who hate you, who persecuted you, and you shall turn back and do what again? Obey the voice. Obey the word. Obey the instruction of Yah, given by Moses and the prophet like Moses, and do all his commandments, which I command you today. All right, we'll stop right there. I know it's a lot of information, guys. This is foundational to understand the story of why the calendar's so messed up, why there's so much ambiguity. And believe me, none of us have done it right. None of us have done it right. We've done it wrong. We've done it wrong for a long time. We've done it wrong this year. We've done it wrong. We're trying to get it right. We're trying to understand. But this is part of the deception. This is part of the battle. And if you want to stop at one talent, you're never going to know this. You want to stop at 2 talents, you may understand some things, but you're never going to know this. You want 5 talents, you may start to get to an understanding of what some of this stuff is about. You want 10 talents, part of 10 talents is understanding the whole story and beyond, however many other talents there are from there. And I don't know about you guys. Man, I want to get as many talents as we can get. I want to understand everything we can to the best of our understanding, to the best of our knowledge, and go from there. Guys, I hope that you enjoyed that message for today. Think about it. Go over the notes. You can download them. Of course, they're on the app. And of course, they're also on YouTube. You can get them in the description box. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell. Give us a like if you enjoyed this message. Send it out to somebody else. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. I sincerely appreciate it. There we go. Actually, let me make this screenshot there. There we go. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. I sincerely appreciate it. In the meantime, guys, have an awesome rest of the evening. We'll see you this upcoming Friday night, 7:30, for our Hidden Manna, and we got a neat message for you this upcoming weekend as well. Guys, shalom.